Christmas Adventure, Sarah's Bell, written and illustrated by Joshua Kind. I had to grow up by myself after my brother had gone to university. I felt angry that he wasn't there for me, although I knew that growing up was sometimes a singular occasion. Now it was later, and I was all grown up. It was raining in the city where I attended university, and I had a party of my own to attend. My brother and I hadn't spoken to each other for years, ever since I thought I was smarter than him. It was Christmas Eve, and I didn't want to go visit them, my brother, mother, and father. My phone buzzed. Must be my car, I thought out loud. I rushed downstairs, forgetting my umbrella, and stepped out onto the curb. My driver had opened the door for me, so I hopped in, with no time to get my umbrella or to wait for another car. Is your name Sarah? Yes, I replied. Going home? Asked the driver. No, I'm going to a party with my friends, I replied. Suddenly the car dropped down through the street into a darkened tunnel. Immediately the car launched forward as we accelerated faster and faster. Not able to raise my head from the headrest, I looked out the windows and became dizzy. White and yellow lines on the tunnel walls seemed to turn into shapes of tigers and tigers. A light appeared at the end of the tunnel, yet we weren't slowing down. Then all of a sudden, the car stopped at a high-security gate with bright lights blinding us. What are we doing here? I asked. We have to save your brother, declared the driver. What are you talking about? I demanded. Remember the phone call? The driver replied. I thought that was you, I said. I checked my phone, and sure enough, my brother had sent a text to me. It read, "Emergency. Help!" Your brother's in danger, said the driver. Do you want me to take you to him? Yes, of course, I exclaimed. A guard tapped on the window. State your business, he said. We're here for her brother, the driver replied. She's not on the list, informed the guard. The driver calmly stared at the guard and instructed, She's on the list. Without even a blink, the guard repeated, She's on the list, and waved us through. We fell in line with an escort of red vehicles driven by drivers dressed in red uniforms. We arrived at a large blue building labeled Training. The fastest way to get your brother's house is by rocket, exclaimed my driver. Instructors in blue uniforms will instruct you with the information you need for the journey, he added. After that, others in light blue uniforms will test your strength and character for making the trip, he concluded. I rose to the occasion. I took the instruction and passed the test of my strength and character. I had the right stuff and earned my wings to fly as an astro passenger. Suiting up in my very own spacesuit, I headed to the launch pad. The launch pad and rocket were lit up like Christmas trees, even brighter. In the capsule, I pushed the green button. Red flames burst out of the launch pad vents. A cold trail of blue light followed behind the rockets as we flew through the sky. I figured we'd be at my brother's house in a few minutes. Then I noticed that we weren't coming down. It looked as if we were headed towards the sun. I called Mission Control and told him, Help! I'm headed for the sun. Of course it's okay, Mission Control replied. Going through the sun is the only way to get to Mars. Mars? I questioningly cried. I may have fainted, because as the space around me grew more bright, I was sure I saw purple seahorses floating by. In the darkness of the black hole, at the center of the sun, I woke up to a growing, blinding light. Was I in heaven? Then someone, holding a flashlight in my face, shouted, Wake up! You're on Mars! With the light out of my eyes, I looked around to find myself surrounded by little green Martians. In a strange way, they looked like elves. I must have lost my mind. The next thing I knew was that a young bearded guy wearing a red and white hat, holding a glass in his hand, asked me, "Want some ice water?" "Where's my brother?" I asked. He replied, "Let's talk about that after we get you out of this heat." The elves escorted me underground, where thousands of tunnels were off in all directions. "All this could be yours," said the young man who wore a red hat. "I'd like to see my brother now," I insisted. "Stay a while," he offered. "We have plenty of time for that." He took me to a throne room and handed me a scepter. On top of the scepter was a large, shiny, jingling bell. My mind wandered away from my brother, like I was under a spell. For what seemed to be 3 days, I sat on my throne, while armies of elves brought me whatever I wanted. Nearly falling asleep, my hand shook my scepter, and it let out a loud jingle. I came to my senses and remembered my brother. I stood up, letting go of my scepter. It fell to the polished marble floor with a thud and a jingle. The bell at the top broke off and rolled across the floor, jingling all the way, and stopped at the feet of a little elf girl. The little elf girl picked up the bell and tucked it up under her little green shirt for safekeeping. "I want to see my brother," I told the guy wearing the red hat. "All right," he said. "We have a spaceship prepared for you, called the Maroon. Please, do take a bunch of elves with you." I looked back one more time at the landscape behind me. Sprouts of green vegetables emerged from under the soil all around me. Elves in green vestures emerged from under the ground to get on the ship. One little elf girl, walking in line, smiled at me, her hands on her rounded tummy, as if she were an expectant mother. I smiled back and proceeded to get into my maroon spacesuit. Without even a rumble of a liftoff, the ship and all of us inside were enveloped in a bright lavender light. In an instant, we vanished into thin air, were teleported into space, and were on our way home. Each elf manned their station, and to my great elation, we were heading straight for the sun. It all seemed to swirl to the sound of a whirl, and now we were well on our way. In the distance, we could see glowing lights, some red and some blue. Either my eyes were playing tricks on me, or those lights were red cats and blue dogs flying through space. They were trying to stop us from getting to the sun. We only managed to escape when they started fighting like cats and dogs with each other and forgot all about us. The yellow sun welcomed us back. It looked like a fresh, warm cake donut. The purple seahorses waved their tiny arms. The black hole readily transported us back to Earth. At the end of the black hole was a tiny white light, growing larger as we approached. The bright light became so bright. After a moment, I realized that I was back in my car on a peaceful street covered with snow. "Just in time," declared my driver. "Time for what?" I inquired. "Don't you recognize?" asked the driver. "This is your brother's house." I gathered my thoughts and got out of the car. "Thank you," I shouted to the driver. Running carefully up the snowy walkway, I jumped the steps up to the porch. I knocked and knocked loudly on the green door of my brother's house. My brother opened the door. Surprised, he asked, "What are you doing here?" "Oh my gosh, you all right?" I asked. "What's the emergency?" "Oh, that," he replied. "Come on in and have some hot chocolate and marshmallows," he invited. We went into the kitchen, and he reminded me about the last time I was at his house. It was the last time we had spoken. I had been angry and had grabbed his favorite jingle bell off the hearth mantel and had thrown it at him. "I was thinking you might be able to help me find it," he related, "because when you threw the bell at me, I was shielding my eyes, and it didn't see where it landed." I was a bit disappointed at his definition of an emergency. However, I knew what the bell meant to him. When I was a little girl, he had told me a fantastical story about how he had received it. Only now was I finding out that he had been without it for some years. After I had calmed down, I started to realize that my actions had affected my brother in a negative way. I also started to remember my own fantastical experience of getting here. Yet, without any proof, I thought it silly to share. It started to dawn on me that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. I was not even sure how I got here. At that moment, a bright sparkle twinkled from beneath the radiator on the other side of the room. I got down on the floor and reached under to investigate. It was my brother's bell. I was so excited to have helped him find it again. Silly brother, I told him. Your bell is right here. Thank you so much, my brother exclaimed. Hey, why don't you come with me to visit Mom and Dad? He asked. No, thank you, I replied. I've had enough adventure for tonight. I can accept that, he said. At that moment, I heard a ring and looked for my phone. I reached into my coat pocket to get my phone, except instead of finding my phone, I felt some other shape. I pulled out a jingling bell, the one from my scepter on Mars. The little elf girl who hid it under her shirt must have placed it in my pocket on the trip home. My night's adventure really hadn't been a dream after all. I was having a change of heart. I changed my mind, I told my brother. Let's go see Mom and Dad. We ordered a car and were soon dashing through the snow, through underground tunnels, in our own one-horse open sleigh. On the way, I showed him my own bell and started to tell him about my night's adventure. Back on the surface roads, we encountered a great many more delivery trucks than we'd seen in previous years. That meant that more people were getting presents in the morning. That seems like a new company, pondered my brother. I wonder what Maroon means. It means after Mars, I told him, and I was happy to be back on Earth. As we arrived at our parents' house, I couldn't help but notice. You know, there are also a great many more Christmas lights this year, too. Sometimes the greatest presents, the greatest gifts, are those times when you realize something that you had not been able to previously understand, or even have known to exist. This story is written in a pattern that follows 8 progressive octaves, each containing 8 progressive notes, for a total of 64 notes. Each note is represented in order by ut, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, or do. Each note is represented by its corresponding color, those being in order G, R, B, and then C, Y, M, K, followed by W. A multitude of your favorite books and movies follow a similar pattern called the hero's journey, told in 8 chapters: Call to Adventure, Supernatural Aid, Threshold Guardians, Challenges and Temptations, Death and Rebirth, Transformation, Atonement, and Return. With this golden ticket, the riddle and the question to you is, what is the name of Sarah's bell? December 25th, 2017, Donut Books. sarahsbell.com.